In this video, Jordan Peterson talks about the importance of paying attention in life.
We kind of conflate rational thinking with attention and sort of make attention like the ugly stepsister of rationality in some sense, because we never really consider it as a separate entity, because we are basically rationalists and we believe that we can deal with the world in rational ways. And I don't think that's really true, because I think the world has at its core, it's existentially irrational. There's too much of it that's absurd and arbitrary. But it is perfectly reasonable to draw a clear distinction between paying attention and thinking. And you know, Western culture has elevated thinking in some sense to the position of the highest deity, but I think we've got that wrong. I think attention is much more powerful than thinking, and that thinking should be the handmaid of attention. Because if you pay attention, you can pay attention to the things you don't know. And you can become incredibly powerful if you pay attention to the things you don't know, because you keep learning and learning and learning and learning. And you know, there's a New Testament injunction that goes along the lines of, you know, it's necessary to love your enemy. And I actually think that that's an existential hint. You know, if you listen to people converse, especially if they're ideologically minded, you have a socialist on one side and a conservative on the other. All they do is trade platitudes. There's no discussion. And the goal of the discussion is to humiliate the other person and to prove that your a priori stance is correct and that that person is incapable of conceptualizing the world properly. It's like, one of the most interesting things about running into people who think differently than you, if you pay attention instead of thinking, is they will tell you the weirdest bloody things, you know, the things you never possibly have thought of. And, you know, it doesn't mean that you have to fall over and agree with them immediately, but what the hell difference does it make if they don't think the same way you do? Maybe out of 10 statements, they'll offer you one that you wouldn't have conceptualized. And that's the difference between paying attention and thinking. And, like, people love to be paid attention to. You know, it's a currency. It's human currency is attention. And attention is an unbelievably powerful tool. You know, one of the things we'll find out is that the ancient Egyptians actually conceptualized attention as a god. And the god they conceptualized attention as was Horus. And you all know of Horus because you've all seen representations of Horus. The famous Egyptian eye. The single eye, that's a representation of Horus. And the Egyptians figured out, like the Mesopotamians had before them, that the highest human deity, which is like the most powerful set of human attributes, is to be associated with, one, with language use. The Mesopotamians really nailed that, but even more importantly, with the capacity to pay attention and watch. And it's sort of suspension of judgment. It's like, you don't have to be right or wrong in the situation. All you have to do is pay attention and listen and watch. And then potentially a solution will emerge out of that. And look, half our brain is visual cortex approximately, you know, so paying attention, we're incredible visual animals. Paying attention really matters. It's the harnessing, that's visual attention in particular, but that's the harnessing of our most fundamental cognitive capacities. So anyways, you know, if you pay attention to things, you can see what interests you. And that's also an empirical search in some sense, which is quite interesting. This is part of why I got interested in psychodynamic ideas. It's like, there are things that rule the way that you govern yourself that you have no control over. You can only discover them. And one of them is what interests you. It's like, so you can't really force it. If you're not interested in something, it's like, well, good luck trying to make yourself interested. Sometimes you can do it to some degree, but more particularly what seems to happen is that your interest highlights things for you. And then you follow that around like you're following a search beam or something like that. And to me, that indicates the action of very, very deep underlying psychobiological systems that in some sense are directing your consciousness. You know, if you pay attention to that process, you can also learn a tremendous amount from that, like what you're actually like. You know, what are you interested in? Where is your being trying to manifest itself? That's another way of thinking about it. So those are all things that we're going to try to figure out. Because I would also say that if you're capable of allowing your true being to manifest itself, so that would be your potential, that's also the best source you have of the kind of weaponry that you need to defend yourself against the inequalities and tragedies and horrors of life. Because you can reveal yourself, in a sense, by pursuing what's illuminated for you. And I can't tell you whether or not that's true, but It's a powerful idea, and it's a very old idea, and I think there's plenty of evidence that at least it is a, what do you say? It's plausible, yes, it's more than that, but plausible will do, because I can't think of a better word at the moment, but it's a hypothesis that has enough potential that it might be worth testing. And I would like you to test that sort of thing. Like, one of the things that I really encourage students in this class to do, and you can start doing this right away, is pay attention to what you hear yourself say. Like, just watch, pull yourself into two. Detach yourself from your ideas and thoughts and watch what you say. And at the same time that you watch what you say, watch how you feel when you say what you say. And what I'd like you to try to detect is, you'll notice, if you start noticing, that some of the things that you say make you feel strong and together and united, and other things that you say make you feel disunited and weak. And then I would say, quit saying the ones that make you feel disunited and weak, because they're false. And what you're picking up by the loss of strength associated with that utterance is the fact that there's something rotten in the state of Denmark with regards to that use of language. It's manipulative, you're trying to appear smarter than you are, you're trying to prove a point, you're trying to avoid something, like there's some game you're playing that's other than merely stating what you see to be true at that moment. And like, that's a different way to live, you know, because you can calculate and you can plan, and planning is useful, I have nothing against that, but you can manipulate reality so that it manifests what you want. Or you can decide that what you're going to do is pay attention and to call things as you see them, and to see what happens if you do that. And like, that's a real risk, right? Because you don't know where that's going to take you. So that's an act of faith in the Kierkegaardian sense. It's like, if you have faith in the truth, what that means is that you will say the truth. And that's a hard thing to do. You know, it doesn't mean that you can say whatever you want, whenever you want, regardless of the effect on other people. Or that you can use the truth as a baseball bat, which you can certainly do. It's a sophisticated, it requires a tremendous amount of sophisticated, it requires a tremendous amount of sophistication. But, you know, one thing you might think about is, well, if you are attempting to make yourself a mouthpiece of the truth, you have reality on your side. And then you might say, well, could you possibly have anything more powerful on your side than reality? And so it might not be a reality you want, or the thing that you would wish for, but you might think, well, you know, if you called things as you saw them, and you were very careful about that, maybe that would lead you through life properly. It's a very different way of thinking, and it is tied with this idea that there's something fundamental about the truth. So I would say, to start this, if you want, just pay attention to what you say. You know, and like, you're detached from it. So don't identify too much with what you're saying, because that's another thing that people do. They identify with what they think. It's like, what makes you think that you're thinking? It's like one of the things Jung said, which I really love. It blew me. It just flattened me when I first read it. He said, people do not have ideas. Ideas have people. And so, you know, I listen to ideologues talk all the time, and it's like, it's not them talking, it's some dead spirit of the past that's, you know, voicing its opinion through them. And you can tell when you're talking to someone like that, because you can predict everything they're going to say. So in what sense is that them talking? It isn't them talking at all. It's some collective, it's a collective voice that has appropriated them and convinced them that it's actually part of them. It's like, no, that's a devil. That's what that is. So just watch. You can try this experiment all on your own. Try it for a month. Detach yourself from what you say and think. And notice when you say something, if it makes you feel more grounded and powerful, or weaker. And stop saying things that make you weak. So, you know, that's sort of like existential test number 1.